So it's beginning of 2020, and the Stephen Perse Foundation is very much focusing on what we need to do to support our young learners through probably the greatest challenge facing mankind, which is the crisis around the environment. And I'm delighted to be able to chat today to Natasha Devon, who's the most brilliant, inspiring lady who's absolutely committed to understanding and help support teachers with learners who potentially have mental health issues. So, good afternoon.
Hi.
And I wanted to really just talk to you about this thing that's come to exist, particularly last year. I think Greta Thunberg brought it to the fore. But this whole notion of eco-anxiety. What do you understand by that?
Well, I think there's lots of factors at play. First thing to say is that eco-anxiety is really widespread. And one of the reasons is that young people are able to access the news in ways that they never have been for previous generations. I think, when I was a teenager, I was aware that we invaded Iraq and that Princess Diana died. And that was kind of the extent of my current affairs knowledge, because I didn't watch the news. That was something my parents did. Now, there's 24-hour rolling news.
But they didn't have that then.
There's also phones, and also the news is being delivered in accessible ways with things like BuzzFeed. It's not dry anymore, it's entertaining for young people. And that, of course, means that there's additional worry because the world is a scary place. So I think there's that, the fact that nobody in charge seems particularly competent, and as amazing as Greta Thunberg is and all of the young people who went on strike, you go, should it really be up to them to be tackling something which, as you say, is one of the biggest issues facing humanity? And then I think the third element to it is that when you are feeling anxious for whatever reason, there is a human tendency to try and pin it on something tangible. They did this really interesting experiment actually where they showed they were able to, I'm not quite sure how, divide up the left and right brain response. I think it was by covering eyes, but they showed a sign that said walk to some test subjects, but they wouldn't have seen it consciously. It was their unconscious brain that saw it. And they all got up and walked. What was really interesting, though, was that they all then made up an excuse for why they had walked. So they didn't say, I just felt a compulsion to walk. They said, oh, I was thirsty, I needed a glass of water, or I wanted to go and look at that picture over there. And that's what we do as human beings. We feel first, and then we rationalize second. And I think there's all kinds of reasons why young people feel anxious, but the environment is something tangible that you can pin it on, perhaps.
Okay, so what we're saying, I suppose, which is perhaps what we sense ourselves within a school environment, is that the young people, actually, frankly, throughout my career, even before social media, they've always felt a level of anxiety and concern. And I suppose what you're saying is the narrative around them is changing, and therefore it's becoming more pinpointed on that. But I was reading a piece in the Times recently, I don't know if you read it, where it was talking about people like yourself, mental health professionals, if you like, or experts. They were talking about so many young people presenting with eco-anxiety. But is it, as you say, just because that's something that they can label their anxiety with? Because I suppose I had nuclear war anxiety, and I'm that generation.
Well, I was talking today in the presentation about how the word anxiety covers so many different eventualities. Having anxiety about the environment is normal and understandable. It's a perfectly sane response to an insane world. One of my favorite quotes actually is Jiddu Krishnamurti is, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. Wow. And I think so. I think eco anxiety is an understandable response. If, however, that is preventing you from functioning and it's spilled over into anxiety disorder, then I think you have to ask, is there something else going on with that individual?
So what I suppose what we're searching for is ways to support our young people and their well-being. We all talk a lot about well-being. And what would be your advice around this particular area? Because for me, as teachers, we like to control what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, classrooms are basically there as agents of education, and we might like some messiness, but we want to feel that the outcomes will be the outcomes we aspire to. Whereas we're living at the moment in a world where Australia's on fire.
Yeah.
You know, it's apocalyptic. So how does one manage that? Or do you just manage the underlying well-being?
Well, I think particularly with eco-anxiety, first of all, make it known to the young people that you are aware of it and you're doing something about it. So you are saying the adults have got this. So Trump and Boris might not care, but we do, and we're in a position of authority. And so you're almost kind of taking on some of the responsibility, so they don't feel that they are fighting this alone. And also giving them tangible things that they can do. I mean, there is a reason that we love to recycle, even though in the scheme of things, you know, it's not making that much of a difference. It's because it's something active that we can do, and it's giving some personal power back to the individual.
It's empowerment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So working out things that you can do in school with them that make them feel like they are making a difference would be the other thing I would say.
And actually, interestingly, that's what was said in the article about this, that the experts are saying you've got to empower people, because it's disempowerment that makes you feel your life is out of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Greta Thunberg thing, I'm a great admirer of Greta Thunberg, but
Me
I know,
too.
You know, she's been quite extraordinary, but it's the point you're making about, is it right that the pressure of saving the world is falling on the shoulders of a young 16-year-old girl? You know,
it's really interesting with Greta Thunberg, because I saw an interview with her dad in which he was saying that because she has autism, he said that he felt that her passion for the environment was what forced her to do things like public speaking and meeting people and traveling, and things that she was very fearful of before. And he said it's almost like his words were, it made her normal. It made her a normal young person. I think it shows how sometimes a bit of adversity can, in terms of your own personal development, be really helpful. I also think that for me, like predominantly most of my work is with teenagers. And I love working with teenagers because they're at this perfect point in their development where they are old enough to understand how the world works, but they're young enough to want it to change. So you get these ideas when you're working with a class of teenagers where they go, well, why don't we just do it like this? And you think, I don't know. We probably should do it like that. And so in some respects, I think Greta Thunberg is the perfect poster person for this movement, because you are so engaged with those issues at that age, and generally people become more myopic in their thinking as they get older. They start thinking about taxes and property prices and the inevitability of death, and you know, they just become more selfish, I guess. But then on the flip side of that coin, it's exactly what you said, where you go, you've got a young vulnerable person who's having to do the donkey work on this, and that doesn't seem right.
I have to say, I don't think it reflects very well on my generation. I'm of the older ilk. I feel that we have let young people down, but it's been really personally inspiring for me, Natasha, to meet with you today and to listen to what you have to say to my colleagues and myself about what we can do to help our young people. And I do have every faith in their ingenuity, their creativity, and their ability to do the right thing. So I thank you very much indeed for making today a really special day for us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.